what you did in college. Ours was the vampire ones. What was that one? At 4 o'clock. Still, I won't talk. Hey, John, Peter's doing worse. He's doing worse. Peter, my friend, they upped his prescription. He's worse.
Who's worse?
He got my center.
From what?
Rheumatoid arthritis at John.
All right, everybody turn on your mic.
No, Peter Oler, my friend.
Pete Oler. I love Pete
I
Oler.
know too.
Everyone turn on your microphones. Make sure they're all on. All right, I'll call to order the 8:45 work session. The first item is the draft agenda review, amendments, and approval. I have an amendment on for item number C, 8C under new business. I want to move that up to right after 4, the public comments on agenda items. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, Mr.
You're on.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to read a statement before there's public discussion regarding the brunch bill.
Right, that's what I'm moving up to
Okay.
right after.
We're not there yet, though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's going to be after number 4. Any other comments with regard to the draft agenda? None appearing. I have a motion to accept the draft agenda.
So moved.
So
All those in
moved.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next item is any mayor or council comments or discussions?
Mayor, I have one. The public will be, I'm sure, interested in the Grand Strand Area Transportation Study, GSAT, it's what it's called. I sit on a council, as does John Corbett, representing the town for GSTAT. And the Carolina Bays Parkway, which we all refer to as the extension of North Carolina Route 31, which would come from Bell and Bell Chevrolet, moving towards Charlotte through, let's call it backcountry. Hickman Road area is one of the areas that it's referred to. There's 6 or 7 different routes there. Both North and South Carolina have come up with funds. South Carolina has come up with it with a 1% sales tax that was voted on last year. North Carolina is funding it through designated state funds to immediately now start a environmental impact statement to determine if Route 17 is sufficient for future or if an additional interstate standard route through the backcountry of southeastern Brunswick County tying into Route 31 is more appropriate for evacuation and other means. And honing in on a route, right now there's 8 different routes or 8 different lines that have been drawn on a map, and this environmental impact statement study will better fine-tune some of the problems that could be created by that. That's a $4.2 million budget that's split evenly between North and South Carolina. On another note, I-140, which we're all interested in, which would go from the battleship to Bolivia, has a scheduled opening for November of this year. That should be awesome. Bypasses Leland totally. The final completion of that road won't be for another year after that, but they'll be tweaking it with landscaping and other things like that, but it should be open to the public sometime the end of November of this year. That's it.
I have one announcement with regard to the closed session that we were in. The council received the benefit of advice from the attorney with regard to litigation regarding Jaguar's Lair and the West End property, and other legal advice with regard to issues which will be discussed here later. But no action was taken, and there's no action to be taken at this time. Request everyone join me in pledging allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item is a public hearing. This is under number 2. A, public hearing on amendment to a UDO amendment to Article 6, Section 6.04, Article 7, Section 7.09 on privacy fence subdivision. I have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor? All right, the public hearing is now open on the proposed UDO amendment with regard to, the amendment to the UDO with regard to the erection of privacy fences. Any member of the public want to be heard on that amendment? None appearing. I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is public hearing on UDO Amendment Article 6, Section 6.06 HBB1, maximum density in the BB1 zone. The council has received the report from the planning board. The planning board recommended that the zoning application be denied, the increase in density be denied. The council set it down for a public hearing tonight. I'll have entertain a motion to open the public hearing on that amendment.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any member of the public want to be heard on that proposed amendment? Okay.
Can I say something before that opens up?
Speaking to the.
I just want to make everything clear. This is about a piece of property on 27th Street that Ron Eller owned at one time. He sold it to this Red Tide Development Company. Huh? Riptide, rather, I'm sorry. Hi, Jim. But at that time, I was approached by Ron Eller to ask the town council for his money back for the fees. He was a builder for 40 years on the island. So I asked the town council that we would get the same fees back with a new developer coming in, taking the same plans over, doing the same building in the middle of a block that has, you know, high concentrated Ford condos in the building. And I approached Peter, John, Rich, Carol, and myself, and they said there'd be no problem doing this. Now, did the builder come across and get the
Excuse
permits?
me. What do you think I said to
We
you?
said that we would allow the money to come back to Ron Eller.
We said we would refund.
We said we'd refund money for a building you never built.
No, but we would get the same money back from the new builder because he's building the exact same footprint with the same exact
It
building.
never got that far. I don't remember that as a discussion. I don't remember
I,
thinking about it.
I
that
remember
way.
we said it was only fair because Ron wasn't going ahead with his plan, that we would
Does
refund the
that-
money on his
Does
permits.
the money have a bearing on the zone change?
No, just that at that time, I felt, and I've never talked to the owners of this company, don't know who they are. They approached me by a couple of emails and one or two phone calls, and I said, yes, this was something I discussed with the town council, and that we would go for it. Now, I have to say that you guys took a long time to get your permits, and between the time we agreed to do this, and the time they acquired a permit.
No.
Real quick.
The timing is wrong.
No, it is not wrong.
Let him finish.
The time they required a permit, we already made a decision to have low-density area.
That change in density was last June. The
Let's go
request for sending money back happened within the last year. That happened after the
That's not-
density
that's
had
not
already
true.
been changed.
That was last
I
year.
know when the density was changed, and it was last June,
Yes,
a year ago June.
but Ron had that building with a permit for high density. That building was going to be a four-bedroom, four condo building.
Okay, whatever it was, that the density was changed, he then sold the property to another individual. After at the time he sold the property, we had changed the
Is that
density.
true? Then when we gave the money back, the high-density rule
That
was
was-
still in effect, wasn't it?
No. No, first it was the changing the density.
Excuse me, Carol, I'm talking, please, let Lisa look into it for us.
Well, how does, what's that bearing on the changing the density?
Well, if we change it to low density, now they can only build a two condo building there instead of four. And between, on each side, it'll be four condos on each side of them. We're gonna put two condos right in the middle. Don't you think that'll look a little odd?
Well, this, as I understand it,
Can we save this for discussion
This-
when we talk about the issues? Right now, it's supposed to be a public
you,
hearing.
no, you're right, you're right. So, I had about 3 hands. Jan?
I agree with Joe O'Keefe. This microphone is really tough on short people. Jan Harris, 206
Is-
North Shore Drive.
Is it on?
I don't know.
Okay.
Add it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on, okay.
I'd like to speak on the UDO Amendment Beach Business One. The density on that particular BB1 was 2.5 years ago, changed 2.5 years ago. It was 2015. It was reduced at that time by a citizen request text amendment. That text amendment request passed the planning board unanimously, and then it went to the council, and the council passed it as well. That was in the early part of 2015. I was the person that requested the text amendment. The reason the density was changed was because it was leading to undesirable development and parking problems on the island. Additionally, the ordinance as it existed did not meet the town's CAMA land use plan vision statement for how the CAMA use plan proposed for the island to develop. I respectfully request that the council vote no on this UDO amendment request. Thank you.
Thank you. Another hand, sir?
Works for taller people, too. Dave Eastburn, 424 32nd Street. I, too, would like to request your support in rejecting this request. I wasn't aware of who had requested it, so I didn't know anything about the party, other than passing this as an ordinance amendment would enable others in other parts of the island to develop at similar densities. And if you can imagine Sunset Boulevard, when you come across the bridge, developed at 35 point whatever it is units per acre, I can't imagine the density. It's going to be a solid wall from the bridge up to the pier. So again, it's contrary to our vision of the island that you all have so thoughtfully incorporated, and I request that you reject that request.
Thank you. Larry?
Larry Hershoff, 219 Barony Place Drive. I too was unaware who owned this piece of property, but I had made my decision on what was right before I knew who they were. Riptide's perfectly nice people. However, were this to be approved, we would be establishing a precedent which would harm Sunset Beach, the residents of Sunset Beach. It would make the owners of various undeveloped properties a little richer. It would increase our tax base a little bit, but all that would be at the cost of great future congestion. When I was doing a little bit of research on this, I went and I tried to find out what the zoning requirements in Ocean Isle Beach were, just for comparison, and they are 6 units per acre within the R2 zoning district. So even at 21.7, we're allowing a lot of development. I just cannot imagine why we would want to further congest our infrastructure, and I feel badly for anybody that had something misrepresented to them potentially. But if this UDO amendment were to go through at 35.2 units per acre, all you're going to do is you're going to have a lot more units develop on the island, and I don't think that's good for any of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? None of, sir?
seem to be in the vast minority here.
Name?
You need, name.
Pardon me?
Name.
James Farson, Riptide Builders.
Address?
8985 Marshy Lane. I approached the permitting department out here when we were scheduled to look into buying this property. At no time was I told that a 4-unit building could not be built. We submitted permit, which was, as Mrs. Scott said, a little later. I had met with the inspectors because there were some code issues. We got all the code issues straightened out because the last 2 buildings that were permitted do not meet the state code. They had to get signed off on because the building inspectors would not sign off on them. We got that straightened out with this building. And all this was done before we ever purchased the property. And at no time were we told that we couldn't build a 4-unit building there. So permits are in, everything. Building inspector looked at them, called me in, said, plans look fine, everything's good, but you can't build the building, which is just about Florida's, you know. So we're just asking, you can't build anything else where it's setting other than a 4-unit building. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. We would just like, like I say, permits are in, ready to be picked up, everything. We would just like, 24 hours, could you change it for 24 hours? We'll pick up the permit and proceed with that, and you can go back to your density requirement. We've invested a lot of money, misrepresentation, I feel, on the seller, and out front should have said something also that a 4-unit building could not be built. And we would not have spent this, and we've been patient, we've been paying interest on this loan for quite a long time. That's all we're asking for. The one building right there.
Before you leave, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
At the time you purchased it, it was zoned for 21.7?
I have no idea.
When did you purchase it?
The exact date, ma'am, I cannot tell you.
3 months ago, 6 months ago,
No,
9 months ago?
it's been longer than that. It was, I've got a letter here that was dated August 2016 from Cindy.
After the change had been made.
That's what I come to find out. It was after the change was made, yes. But there again, I feel that someone should have.
Jim, can you get the approximate date you bought the piece of property and get that to the mayor?
Sure.
Okay. We're not speculating on dates.
Yeah.
Any other questions of?
Sometimes I get confused. There's 2 lots on 27th Street that seem to be where there's no units. One is in the middle. Which plat are you referring to? The one at the end or the one in the middle?
The one in the middle. It's 407. It's 407.
That's the second lot in on North Shore, coming off of North Shore?
Yes, sir.
On the east side of the road there, right.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you. Any other public comment, Mr. Nern?
Charlie Nern, 647 Oyster Bay Drive. I didn't read the whole package. So he wants to build a 4-unit condo in the middle of the other 4-unit condos? Nobody's going to answer. Well, my
Yes,
concern.
Charlie, that's it. That's the answer.
Right? If you change this, is it going to be like this gentleman said? You're going to be able to build fourplexes from the bridge to the pier?
It changes the zoning, and we'll discuss this.
It would impact
In-
everything in the BB1 zone. It would not impact this one lot. It would impact every property in the BB1 zone.
But you could build a 4-unit condo in what is now water?
No, no,
If
no,
you
no.
can go from the
no.
bridge to the pier.
No, no,
like
it's
you
physically,
said.
no.
You know that when we- that was a statement that meant
Well,
from
that's-
North Shore
That's why I'm asking.
Beach Business District. His-
Oh, okay.
His request would change the density in the entire Beach Business District from 29 back to 35. We had changed it from 35 to 29.
21.
21, excuse me, it was the same, looking at the density throughout Sunset Beach, because I think that the 21 is density in Sea Trail and in other locations.
So his unit would be bigger than the other 4 units there, 4-unit condo?
Same design, Charlie.
It would,
Same blueprint, same everything.
it's not the size of the unit, it's the number permitted.
We'll talk about it when we,
All right, I'm still a little confused, but if it's going to be the same as the other ones, I'd say yes.
Okay. Any other comments? I entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the public hearing on amendment to UDO Article 1, 2, and 7, Building Codes, Regulations, and Standards. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now open for public comments with regard to the proposed amendment for Building Codes, Regulations, and Standards. Any member of the public? None appearing. I'll entertain a motion to close this public
So-
hearing.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is minutes for approval.
I've got a couple of changes, sorry about that. Pretty minor, just give me a second because I have to flip through. June,
While she's doing that, Mayor, I had already submitted my revisions to Lisa,
Right.
and they were minor.
June 5th, page 3, top of the page, third line, just make it, motion to close, take out the D after closed. I think you mean on page 4, and this would be your comment, you mean 9 and under 500 each, 10 and over 300? Is that, okay. You'll be pleased to know, there's one substantive change, which I just want to get to. Okay, on page 5 of the minutes for June 26th, page 5, under new business, I think you've got what happened reversed in those two items. This was consideration of acceptance of the planning board recommendation in the top one not to approve a UDO amendment for Article 6 zoning districts relating to maximum density. And in the bottom, you're talking about the planning recommendation to deny the proposed UDO amendments. It was to accept the proposed UDO. They weren't denying that on building codes, regulations, and standards. They voted to approve that. So the two need to be fixed because they're just wrong. Okay? And I think that's it.
Any other comments on the minutes? None appearing. Do I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the June 5, June 20, and June 26 regular meetings?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item on the agenda is public comments on agenda items only. Now's the opportunity for the public to comment on any of the agenda items. Request that you, when you step forward, you state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes per speaker. Any public comments on agenda items? Mr. Eastman?
Dave Eastburn, 424 32nd Street. We've exchanged a few emails over the past couple days between myself and the council. And I just wanted to clarify a comment that I made at the June 26th meeting and a response from Councilwoman Scott at that particular meeting. And Ms. Scott had, at the beginning of the meeting, said we all need to start thinking about how we're going to fund wastewater management. And my suggestion later on was to take some of the funds that had been appropriated for the dredging fund and reallocate those to a project that would benefit all of the citizens, all the taxpayers of the town, not just the few who live on the canals. I have no problem with dredging the feeder canal and the finger canals where people currently live and rely on those to maintain their property values. It's the additional dredging that we're talking about that's never been dredged before and that is not adjacent to any properties and which we would all be paying for. So this would not be something that would be allocated through some special tax district to individual property owners.
Mayor, point of
Dave,
order,
that
that's
has
not,
not been
that's not a
determined.
true
But
statement.
It's not a true
let him speak to what's the agenda item that you want to address?
The agenda item is the approval of the minutes from the June
That meeting.
26th.
And
meeting.
what issue do you have with it?
The issue was the response that I got from Ms. Scott that said, and I quote, this is from the recording from the meeting, it says, "Nothing has been appropriated for dredging. It would never be a town cost." And that is factually incorrect. I have a copy of the ordinance that was signed on August
What-
1st.
Excuse me, does, we'll take what you just said for right now to be the truth, or to be actual. What impact does that have on the minutes that were just approved? There's nothing about that in the minutes.
My comment was in the minutes. Her comment was not in the minutes.
Well, but your comment is correctly reflected in the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
And the fact is, there's an ordinance on the books.
We
that
all know that.
authorize-
We-
No, you
we're-
know that, but the audience doesn't know that, and that's the problem, is that when you speak from the dais, and I'm not speaking about you, Mayor.
I understand.
I'm speaking
I
about the
don't take it
council
personally.
people. When they speak, everybody out here hears it. And when it's not in the minutes, then it goes unrecorded.
But what
We have to
does-
go back through hours and hours of video
My
to hear
question
it.
is, what is the relevance of that to an agenda item for tonight?
Correcting the record.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Is the correction that you want the information that you put in the email this afternoon?
Yes.
That said, you would like to see the minutes revised, A, to correct the misrepresentation of what has and has not been appropriated, over 4 million has been appropriated, and B, to accurately reflect my complete comment that we have already appropriated more than 4 million for dredging that will only benefit a few, and that money should be reallocated to cover the cost of the stormwater management project that will benefit the community, the entire community.
That's correct.
That's what you want in the minutes?
Yes.
Okay, even if we don't necessarily agree with it.
Right. In discussing it with Lisa, the clerk, she thought it was covered with the statement that it does say that Mr. Eastburn made the suggestion that the money that was appropriated for the dredging be allocated to the stormwater management. So the minutes do say that.
Yes, but then the comment from
But you want
the
to.
dais that said that it hadn't been appropriated,
We hadn't-
then negated my comment.
Well, that's it,
What I
okay.
told you is, what I was saying is that we have not made a decision on how those amounts will be paid for.
That's
But
not what
the
you
pro-
said at the
Excuse
meeting.
me, this is not the issue. The issue is, do you want to amend the minute, does the council want to amend the minutes to reflect what Mr. Eastburn is requesting as specifically that,
What he's
the
asking
gist, no, it says what he was asking for. It says to allocate what was appropriated for dredging to go to stormwater management. The minutes say that. It already says that. The problem, he wants your comment in that reflected in the minutes.
Why wasn't that
That's-
comment originally in there, Lisa?
All right, so it's a decision of council.
Well, you know,
Do
we
I have
haven't
a-
even had this discussion of how all of this
Do I,
is going to be.
but understand that, and this has nothing to do with dredging or allocation of money for dredging. All it has to do with what is reflected in the minutes from that meeting. That's the only issue. Do I hear a motion that you want to amend anybody wants to amend the minutes?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to amend the minutes to reflect the statement that Mr. Eastburn indicated, so that
What statement? I'm not willing to change the minutes.
Well,
I
you
don't
did-
know what is being,
Well, then you don't vote for it. That's the motion. Mr. Serrato made the motion. Is there any discussion on it?
made the motion for what?
To include the language that Mr. Eastburn requested be included, which
And what language is
Councilman
that?
Corbett just read that language.
Say that again? What language?
It's,
Peter?
that's what he said in the email.
Mr. Mayor, the minutes of a council meeting are not intended to be a verbatim dictation of all words that are said. It's the general gist of what's been stated. I can think of probably a half a dozen times since I've been on board for a year and a half as town council, where from the dais we've made it perfectly clear that the way that the dredging district is going to be established and the way the payment is going to be made has not yet been determined by council. And to say that everybody in the town is going to pay for any portion of this dredging is not an accurate statement, and certainly doesn't support the way I would vote for the establishment of a dredging district.
But the only
So I
thing,
do not want, I will not vote affirmatively to have that statement put into the minutes of the meeting.
or is there any other discussion on that motion?
I'm still we are going to put his statement in the minutes. They're there now.
That's what the motion
correct?
is to
That's
do.
the-
That's what the motion is
Just
to do.
his, not Carol's.
No, his statement about what Carol said.
Yeah, he's trying to say what Carol said and have that added into the minutes.
Can we,
It wasn't in
Lisa,
the
can you
minutes.
go
I have
back and
on-
find out
I
what
don't know how
Carol
many
exactly
occasions
said?
stated
Guys,
that
can,
it's the people affected that or the ones who will most likely pay.
But
if we
that's
have
not what
made
you
that
said
determination.
at the
I don't-
meeting.
You know what?
You know,
hey, Peter, I
This
just
is
asked
part of
Bob
the
real
problem
quick.
with this whole
I'd
town
have to listen to the
setup.
whole tape too. I am not willing to make a change.
Listen,
You all
real-
say
well-
things that don't get recorded, and then you
Oh, for
deny it
heaven's
later.
sakes.
I'm asking for a vote on the motion.
Bob, can I just ask one question? I asked Lisa, could she look into it, and she said she could, to see what Carol said, and we can bring it up to next meeting.
I don't care. Whatever happened at that meeting, I'm saying right now, we have not made any decision about how any dredging costs are going to be paid for, or what kind of tax district we're going to have, and that routinely, in the past, we have always assessed the property owners affected, and I assumed that that's exactly what we would do.
But our words up here mean
That's-
something.
But that's a non-starter,
Who
that's
says
a
that
non-starter.
every statement I make out of my mouth is necessarily reflect? I'm telling you, that's my intent, that's what I have said repeatedly.
The only motion is to amend the minutes from that meeting to include the language that John read. That's the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. Any other comments from the public with regard to the agenda items? The next item is Town Administrator Report, and Bonnie, she's not here, but do you have a report?
Actually, I don't.
Do you?
No.
Oh.
Grady, do you?
It was my understanding that 8C was going to be
Oh, you're
moved
right,
up.
no, you're right. I moved 8C up there. 8C, Rich, this is where you, the next item, before we get to the administrator, any of the reports, the item that we're going to consider now is number 8C under new business, which is consideration of adoption of ordinance 110.01E regarding alcohol sales on Sundays beginning at 10:30 a.m., which is commonly known as the brunch bill. And before we entertain it, Councilman Serrato wanted to be heard.
Regarding the brunch bill, although my business partner and I are not presently impacted by either a yea or a nay vote concerning this matter, and have no plans to alter our business schedule, in order to avoid even the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest, I have alerted the mayor and council that I will like to totally recuse myself from any discussion or vote regarding this matter. And I all hope you understand that. Thank you.
And Attorney Richardson has some comment with regard to it.
Given Mr. Serrato's request for recusal, council has to, in my opinion, take up the question first of whether or not to grant Mr. Serrato's recusal request. As the town attorney, based on the arguments that I've heard from Mr. Serrato, given the nature of the brunch bill, applying generally to the businesses within the town of Sunset Beach, and what he just said with respect to it's not going to affect him if it's passed or not under the present operations, I don't believe grounds are sufficient. I don't believe it's even close that he has a conflict of interest. I don't believe it's even close that he has an appearance of impropriety. And I believe he's got an affirmative duty to vote. And I believe that the town council can do as you like. I just give advice, but it's my belief that Mr. Serrato does not have sufficient grounds to avoid his affirmative duty to vote whenever the matter is presented with respect to the brunch bill. And if there's a motion made to either accept or reject Mr. Serrato's recusal request, if town council's majority rejects that request, Mr. Serrato would then need to exercise his vote. If Mr. Serrato then refused to exercise his vote, then his vote would be considered a vote in the affirmative of the council's pleasure with respect to the brunch bill legislation.
All right, take up the first issue with regard to the request or the proffered offer or suggestion that he recuse himself. Do I hear a motion from council to confirm that that's a basis that Mr. Serrato should not be permitted to vote on? Am I phrasing it correctly?
There needs to be a motion by someone.
I'll make a motion. I move that Rich Serrato does not have a legal conflict of interest that would enable us to approve him not voting. I move that we reject his request to recuse himself.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Nay.
You can't vote on it.
You can't vote on it. You got to read the ethics
Nay.
rules.
Hey, recuse yourself from the vote.
Okay. Now we take up the issue of the bill itself. For members of the public, the brunch bill, the state legislature has permitted municipalities to move the time for serving of alcoholic beverages from 12 o'clock on Sundays to 10 o'clock on Sundays.
I move we approve the ordinance amending Chapter 110 to permit the serving of liquor on premises with a valid permit starting at 10 a.m. on Sunday.
I so move it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Did you vote? Did you vote?
No.
You did not vote?
No.
Then for the record,
Then
Mr.
let's-
Serrato's non-vote is considered a yes vote in favor of the motion.
Unanimous.
The The next item is item 5, which is the town administrator report. Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Safe drive.
Thank you, Grady.
Thank you, Grady.
Bonnie, were you going to have a report, or? Okay. Susan's not here, so we don't have an administrator report. Police report.
Good evening. You have the packet from the police report, or from the police department, in your packets here before you. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have
Right,
regarding those.
anybody have any questions? I suggest we do this with all the reports. that we
Chief,
receive.
just real quick, you know, I stopped one of the patrolmen on the beach the other day, and there was dogs on the beach, and they were beyond 40th Street by about 25 feet.
Okay.
And he thought that after 40 feet, it was legal to have dogs on the beach, which it is not. You have to go to the sign that says Bird Island. I did make him aware of that, he was fine with it, but if we could just talk to all the police, so we have one uniform rule, they have to be off the beach, period.
sure.
Beach patrol people.
Oh, no, this is the police department. He didn't know the rules, so.
For sure. I'll make sure they're aware.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. The only other thing I do want to address, if you saw our Facebook post or not, the drop box that we have in the lobby for prescription medicine take back, in under a month, we've had over 60 pounds of prescription medicines turned into Sunset Ridge.
Wow.
So those are 60 pounds of medications that will never end up in the wrong hands. So I'm proud to
Thank
see
you.
that.
Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
Thank you. Unless there's any other questions. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Public Works?
Just like to add that the observation deck in the park is complete.
Dustin, it looks great. Did a nice
Thank you.
job.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Any questions, Dustin?
Yeah, Dustin, can you explain, in front of the park, we put up 2 posts, or someone put up 2 posts?
You talking about right there, the where you come out the exit of the
For
park?
the banners.
That's for banners.
There's two,
Yeah.
there's two
There's-
sets with 2 poles, so a banner can be strung
Yes.
between them. It organizes the banners that advertise what the event is that's going
The
on in
event
the
for the
park.
park, yes.
Like the paddle fest, or the yoga, or the farmer's
Right.
market, or,
Yes.
Was
Did we
that,
not have a UDO that says they're going to be put up so often and for so long?
yes.
Why are we permitting certain things to go?
I have to look at Hiram on that one.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to ask Hiram about that part.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
And by the way, that's something we should address on the park.
All right, thank you, Dustin.
Okay.
Planning?
Good evening. Y'all get a weekly from me, so this June information is a little out of date. But if you've got any questions for me about any more recent stuff, that's great. As far as the special event signs, the planning board is looking into those currently to readdress the rules on those. So it's a current topic for us.
And as far as, are we going to discuss the high density now or later?
Later.
You're not leaving, I guess.
He isn't now.
Question on staffing?
Yes, sir.
Question on staffing. Fairly active, obviously, with permits and inspections. Are you able to keep up? Is it,
Oh yeah, we're not having a problem right now. While we're really busy, it's still being really organized. A lot of the projects, the way they come in, it's not like we're having a house rough in or house final every day. A lot of it's HVAC change outs, flood inspections, rough in, like one rough in or just a connection or something like that. It's we've got a good enough staff right now to handle the amount of workload that we have. I would say we could even increase that work volume a little bit too. There's a few days where, you know, we don't have every minute slammed with inspections, and then there's other days when, you know, we don't see the inspectors all day. So
I just bring that up because obviously we just went through a de-annexation situation, which was difficult at best in Raleigh before the Finance Committee. And But thank you.
Question. Is there an update on what's going on with Cobia and North Shore? The permitting or?
The paving?
The paving?
The paving project, yeah.
That's Dustin and
That's
Lisa.
Dustin.
Yeah, Dustin, we don't want to find out that 2 months have gone by and it's been, nothing has happened. So- Perfect. They hired somebody? Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Herm.
I'll see you in a few minutes.
Fire. Fire.
Have my report.
Any questions with regard to his report or otherwise? No,
Any
not appearing.
questions about beach patrol?
Not appearing.
I see them out there doing a good job.
Thank you. We've had several issues in the water, saved some, but lost one.
Kevin, I do have a question. The other day we called and there were swimmers a mile out swimming. Were they okay?
Yeah,
They were just
fine.
swimming.
They were absolutely fine. They got out to them, they, gave them the hand, they came in, and they said, yeah, we were fine, we were just, it was really shallow. If you went out in the water, it really wasn't that deep where they were. They just were very far offshore.
As far as I've ever seen any swimmer.
Huh?
They're pretty far.
They were out there pretty short. We've had a couple of incidents between the two islands. We've saved one and we lost one. Pretty tragic little situation. The gentleman fell off a boat in the inlet and the current was going out and it took him no PFD. We got him out of the water and unfortunately they were unable to revive him. So, but other than that, we've been pretty fortunate. We've pulled several people. That inlet has started to become a real swirl, especially going out. So if you see anybody down there and then you don't see them, start getting somebody on the way because, it is taking them out. We were out, the gentleman that went in the water off our boat, he said it was like a river when the water was heading out to the ocean, when the tide's going out. It's very, very fast current. If you see people in it, they don't look like they know what they're doing there. Just make sure you tell them, hey, that's like a river there. Just be very careful.
And that's very different than a riptide. It's not a riptide, it's just the outgoing tidal current.
It is a serious flow of water. We've been, and if anybody's seen us, we've been down there training in that area quite a bit lately because of that situation. It's almost a swift water situation for us.
Kevin, is any signage out there indicating to people maybe we should think about that?
We don't own the end.
Nope.
It's not even Sunset Beach.
So should I.
It's their end. So I don't know what we need to do. That'll be something we'll discuss a little further into it with our
Have you
partners.
talked to my son when he shows up, not to send him out there?
Well, we had a kayaker that got caught out there. Fortunately, he was being pushed in and couldn't keep it up, and it flipped him over. And he had PFD on, just went to a float, and we found him very shortly after they called us. We came right out and got him. So we've had some incidents out there using the water rescue craft, and like I said, we've gone out and checked on several swimmers who people thought were way too far out and got out there and wasn't as deep as you would think it is. It was,
You can't stand that far out, can it?
I didn't think they could either, and the guy, he was just swimming, and he stopped and he stood, and I said, "Are you standing?" He said, "Yeah, I was actually on jet ski." And he goes, "Are you standing?" He said, "Yep." And I was like, that's strange.
He had long legs.
Yeah.
He had long legs.
No, he was normal legs. I think he found a sandbar out there or something, but, everything's been going smoothly down in my department. Any other questions? I'll be back up here shortly.
Okay, thank you. Finance?
You have my report. I do want to draw your attention to the fact that this is a draft financial statement for June. The reason for that, on both pages, there's a disclaimer, if you will. After the end of June, there are a number of transactions that take place that are germane to the year. They just don't actually occur in June. We're allowed to declare, accept revenue that is June or quarter four revenue as late as August. So there are a number of things. This is not the end-all and be-all. This is just a snapshot on the end of, on that day, the 30th of June. And to that note, the audit has begun in earnest. The auditors were out here last week doing their field work, and we will have something to look at very shortly.
This is a really early audit.
It is, and we are ready, so.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm happy.
Any other questions or comments? Finance? All right, thank you. The next item is number 7, old business. Discussion concerning the Main Street sidewalk project.
Yeah, we'd just like to bring you a little bit of the background of the last time Mike was here about the sidewalk, about the parking, and the utilities.
And since that time, we've been on site and also out there with ATMC and in discussions with Brunswick Electric regarding those utilities that could have caused the sidewalk to have to meander to the extent that half a dozen or so roadside parking spaces or areas could have been lost. As it turns out, they're based on what they were able to provide us. It seems those utilities can be relocated and not have a net loss in parking alignment along the corridor. So that that's a positive, obviously. That
What's the cost associated with that, though?
none with ATMC. They were minor adjustments in boxes. Brunswick Electric will get back with us on one light pole, but none of their transformer pad mounts or anything of that nature. So no significant costs there. So, and we tried to hone in on some additional cost figures. Of course, went back on the 1.6 miles and the various obstructions that we found along the alignment since that time, the mailboxes, the landscaping, and things that would have to be done. There's still a lot of variability with regard to grading until design's underway. Some of the depths of recovery and grading alignments along the swale areas wouldn't be known, so sediment deposition and movement of sediment and hauling is a variable, as is the changing material prices with rocks and concrete. So our current estimate this month is about $420,000 or so based on what we know. We went back and looked at some details of those faction figures and discussed some with some area contractors on material pricing and all. So that's preliminary numbers based on what we know now without having design features. Now, we did receive some favorable impact in the meantime from that time to now with NCDOT. The District 3 folks had talked with the leaders in the bike ped program in Raleigh, and they perceived it favorably to the extent that given that it was pervious concrete and obviously the roadside swale profile that is typically required would not be a requirement. So that's a couple of benefits. One, with the grading and costs associated with the grading and maintenance, but also as it would relate to a stormwater control measure requirement, given that that's being accomplished. So that was favorable input from them on that as well.
Mike, where's the grant stand right now? Lisa, 100,000 for this?
Yeah, it's 100,000.
And what are the costs, what have we already spent? And does that grant cover those costs too?
All we've spent so far is the
Engineering.
The engineering.
And how much was that?
30,000.
30.
And does the grant cover that 30,000?
Well, it's 30,000. The grant's $100,000.
If we didn't proceed, would the grant cover the 30,000?
Not as far as I know, no.
Okay.
I haven't seen.
From GSTAT, I don't believe it would.
Thank you.
We have to. It's for the
question.
project. I have a question. I was trying to let you finish.
Okay.
And you answered part of it, Mike, about NCDOT having some good news.
Mm-hmm.
Has NCDOT done a structural review, a plan review of the design section that we're suggesting? And I asked the question in the light of pervious concrete. They've got some pretty significant, or pretty specific standards for driveway entrances versus sidewalks that aren't going to see vehicular traffic. And obviously, pervious concrete has a different structural modulus than cast-in-place concrete. Can you address that at all? Have they looked at the structure of it at all yet?
We gave them the plans and the conceptual plans, which included the details. So internally, they understand what we want to do, and also communicated with them that we would have and do have the geotechnical engineering evaluation or basis for those designs. But as far as anything formal, no, until such time as it's submitted for their review.
Okay.
We haven't had those discussions.
Is there any other place we can get grants from?
What was the question, John?
Can we get grants from any other place besides the NCDOT?
Or
It's the GSAT, the GSAT.
Mike, just a couple of questions.
Yes.
Will these sidewalks have curbing?
No.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir, and as a matter of fact, where they cross driveways, existing driveways, the intent will be to flush those back into existing driveways, so they're as unobstructed as possible there. Yeah.
Any other questions? The agenda says possible action. Do we need to take any possible action? Is there any possible action that needs to be taken now? You don't need any action from us.
Well, I think
Well,
just-
we have,
Just move forward with the project if you want.
well, we have not taken an affirmative vote
No,
on
but,
whether or not to proceed.
but we haven't gotten any quotes. We haven't set an RFQ up. We don't have NCDOT approval yet.
Okay.
So there's
Then I
steps
will
that have
shut
to
up.
be taken before I think it would be wise for us. This could cost less or more than we think, depending upon what
That'll
NCDOT's
affect how I
comments are
feel
going to
about
be.
Lisa, can we ask Lisa to put our RFQ out?
I think it's
Can you-
premature, but Lisa and Susan Bonnie can decide when that is appropriate.
We have to meet with DOT.
When's your meeting, Mike, with DOT?
We haven't established a meeting yet. The steps for design, there's been no design done of the project. Your steps for design would have to go through DOT permitting and also DEQ permitting, and for land quality and stormwater.
And that all has to be
So-
done before you could put out a RFQ.
Before you get to the point for anything to go to contractors for final bid estimates, and that's why, and the process from this point, just say you wanted to, the anticipated target for completion, if it was obviously approved to move forward, would be try to get it done before Memorial Day of next year, because you're probably at least a couple of months in construction phase activities, and the permitting phase activities could take a few months once the regulatory folks have those in their hands.
So, Mike, what do you need from us to do? To give you permission to move forward, or you have to have a meeting with DOT
He
first?
just came back and gave us information we requested the
Oh,
last
yeah.
time he gave
What's
the
the next step?
presentation. Well, it's up to Susan to push NCDOT to review the project and
Well,
then come back.
Yeah, DOT can't review the project until such time as engineering plans are produced and submitted to them for that. So I guess the intent was, at least as I understood it, was that the agreeance needed to be to proceed with the project. Because those parts have to be done, those designs and those features, those submittals have to be done to get DOT approval, to
What
get DEQ.
Was the original scope, and I should know, I'm embarrassed,
It
I
is.
don't, it was in that
Yeah.
original scope. So
Yeah.
we've already contracted with you to do that.
Yeah.
So
Until
We
I
were
see
just,
the
we were
costs,
just,
I'm
we were
not-
just, we were just trying to get you to some of those preliminary costs and impacts of the
Right.
alignment that could come. Obviously, you're gonna have material inside the right-of-way, landscape material, timbers, things that are going to be, anticipated to be removed as part of this project. And also, you're gonna have some, some water meters and things, utility things that have to be done as part of the project that will have to be adjusted. The key factors, and the parking was one of those potential impacts, which it looks like that's favorable, that you're not going to impact the parking, linear footage of parking space that's currently there now. That's obviously something you want to
So,
maintain.
without making a final decision on whether or not we're going to move forward with this. This was for informational purposes, and you're continuing to get us the information we would need to make that decision.
We're at
Is that
the,
correct?
we're at the point now where where we either need to
He's done it.
move
We have to tell
forward.
him to do plans.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, I'd like to put a motion
But
that
you
we.
just said that was included in the original.
It is included, but it's not going to cost us any more than the $30,000 we've already allocated for that
Well, then of
engineering
course they should
project.
go ahead, because we
But-
won't get the information we need
Yeah.
unless he does that.
Well,
Yes.
Mark, you're going to make a motion.
I'd like the motion that we give Mike permission to go forward with the study, engineering study. Go to the next-
Engineering design.
Design.
All right, any discussion on that motion? Not appearing, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
The next item is discussion concerning the Mayor's National Climate Action Agenda. You all have received the request. We discussed it preliminarily at another meeting. Do I have a motion, one way or another, to,
I'd like to put a motion that we decline under the preface that this is not a Democratic or a Republican council. It's a general council, and this is a national matter, and I believe strongly that it's a weak, nothing but a gesture, has no bones, no enforcement, and we shouldn't be voting on this.
all right, there's a motion on the floor, is discussion? Mr. Larkin? Mr. Larkin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In prior discussion, deliberation we've had here, I've made it clear that I'm in favor of supporting the mayor's letter. We'll just call it the mayor's letter, because I think it is our obligation up here on the dais to support environmental issues, the environmental welfare of all of our citizens. I think people have turned this into a political issue. And just because Washington, D.C. or the party in power right now may not be for the Paris Climate Accord, they're also not for, they're also in support of offshore drilling. They're also in support of putting wind farms within visual range of our Sunset Beach. However, that being said, I do agree, and just today I got a document from John Corbett that he had put together, and I've changed my mind on supporting the mayor's letter in totality. However, I think I want to strongly put together a document that indicates that we clearly, in the town of Sunset Beach, want to protect and support our environment, whether it's air, exploration for fossil fuels, wind farm affecting migration of whales and visual negativity to our beaches here. And I think we need to express those concerns and climate issues. I'd like to hear from John and maybe a little more, have him expound on what he sent to me today.
John?
Okay, well, first off and fundamentally, I strongly support a resolution that would establish a climate, from the town council, that would establish climate change as a priority concern for Sunset Beach, and resolve that we continue to keep environment issues in the forefront of our decision-making processes. We know quite well that the coastal regions we live in are and will be affected by coastal global warming and rising sea levels, among other climate issues. But in my view, the mayor's agenda is beyond the purview of the town council and Sunset Beach. The mayor's letter seeks commitments, although not obligations, but they do ask for commitments to invest in things like electric vehicles, solar power, energy efficiency, battery storage, and these are well beyond our resources and capabilities. According to the mayor's webpage, there are no binding commitments as climate mayor members. However, they are looking for the members to take actions to achieve an emissions reduction target. That means developing a community greenhouse gas inventory, setting near and long-term goal targets to reduce emissions, and developing a climate action plan. One of the things, for instance, is to support the automakers to provide an estimate for 114,000 electric vehicles That could be for police cars, fire trucks, and that type of thing. These are, in my view, we're well beyond, these commitments are well beyond what we should be expected to do here in Sunset Beach. It's also a major political issue at the national and international level, and even in terms of our national security, where the Secretary of Defense and his confirmation hearings included climate change as a national security threat. But these are not issues that Sunset Beach as a town council is equipped for or should be addressing. So again, I would support a resolution expressing concerns with climate change issues, but I would not support signing Sunset Beach onto the agenda and commitments of the mayor's letter.
Rich, you had something, right?
No, I'm just, I think we all recognize the issues regarding climate change. And there's some things that we can do and there's some things that we can't do. We seem to have ambitious developers who continue to develop on the coast, knowing that sea levels are rising. In my view, I think our environmental issues are direct and they're local, and that's where our concentration should be. In light of that, I would support, I gotta be careful how I say this, I do not support the Paris Accord.
The mayor's agenda.
The mayor's agenda. And I thought, Mr. Mayor, you were going to either look in or have someone look into how this would, I mean, are there applications, are there forms, are there?
Well, if I looked at their website and it's really not, it's really I don't know how other municipalities have handled it. Everything is directed towards mayors. And I wouldn't want to do anything that's not, that wouldn't comport with the majority opinion of the council. But looking at it, all I would have to do is click on there and say, yes, as a mayor, I'll commit to it. But as I say, I wouldn't do that without a direction from the council to do it. My own personal opinion is that I agree with the concepts of the environmental concerns. I also agree with the fact that when I look at the website, and I copied one of the pages, what it says is that, I'll read it, the MNCA, which is the Mayor's National Climate Agenda, founded by Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, former Houston Mayor Annise Parker, and former Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter, commits U.S. mayors to working together to strengthen local efforts for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and supporting efforts for binding federal and global level policy making. And what they say is there are no binding commitments as climate mayor members, only that cities are pursuing actions to achieve an emissions reduction target. 1, developing a community greenhouse gas inventory. 2, setting near and long-term goals to reduce emissions. And 3, developing a climate action plan aligned with the city's targets. I don't know that we've really ever established city's targets, but that's what I've been able to glean from the impact of joining the mayor's climate agenda.
I'm very glad to hear, I've got it on, I'm very glad to hear what you both said. Personally, on a personal basis, I was very disappointed that we left the Paris Accord. I'm fully in favor of, any actions we can take to support environmentally sound policies. But we cannot forget that as a small municipality with nonpartisan elected officials, that our taking an action to join the mayor's group would be perceived by many people in our community who may or may not agree with that as a political action. I would like us to continue to have resolutions adopted for environmentally sound policies that affect Sunset Beach, that concern our air quality, our water quality. As we've been doing for the last few years, we've taken a number of positions against oil drilling, against seismic testing, against wind farms too close to our coasts. We were concerned about terminal groins in Ocean Isle. We've taken a number of positions. That's what we should be doing for items that I think everybody in Sunset Beach cares about. But for me, this would in fact be perceived as a political action, which I think is inappropriate for nonpartisan elected municipal officials.
All right, any other further discussion? The motion is that we not direct me to join the mayor's national
We want you right
agenda.
here, Bob.
Okay.
So
am
an
I
aye
right, Mark?
means
Yes.
no?
So a vote for the motion would be to not do it. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the next item on the agenda is discussion concerning how fire fee systems work. Any council flexibility concerning the use of fire fees and impact on the needs or of building and additional equipment needs or building maintenance repairs. Before we get into the chief, I went through a explanation during one of the budget workshop sessions on the fire district fees and as they operate and impact in Brunswick County and impact the town. The just as a brief reiteration, we have a fire district that includes the incorporated municipality. It includes portions outside the municipality that have nothing to do with Sunset Beach except through the fire district. It's portions of Ocean Ridge, Sunset, what's the name of the?
Ridge.
Sunset Ridge, along that side of 904, which is not Sunset Beach, goes down the beach road towards Ocean Isle, goes west outside of the jurisdictional limits. I learned as part of this fee district committee, this district fee committee, how this really works and how it's worked in the past. And the legislature established limits on what can be charged for fire district fees. And that's charged to every property owner in the fire district. The county has been wrestling with issues that they have that Kevin could explain in greater detail with regard to all fire districts and fire companies in the county, because although there's 19 municipalities, incorporated municipalities, there's, I don't know how many, I think there's only like 5 or 6 paid fire companies, right?
No, there's more than that.
Well, at any rate, they're not all paid fire companies, and there's a lot of the fire response is dependent upon volunteers, and they're not getting enough volunteers, and some of that's due to the age in Brunswick County, which is one of the highest age levels in the state of North Carolina. But they were wrestling with what they were going to do about it. The county commissioners were, and they decided to go to the state legislature and ask for an increase in the fire district fees. The legislature passed. They increased the fire district fees. They asked the local committees, which met to make recommendations, and we met and made a recommendation. The effect of what it is. And I'm editorializing here a little bit. It's a system that hasn't caught up with reality. As I said, the fire district fees are based upon square footage. If you own a 1,400 square foot house, you used to pay $100. Now you can pay up to $200 under the legislation. The county has increased fire district fees across the board throughout the county by 25%. So now $100 would be $125. for a 2,000 square foot house, it would be, originally it was $200, and now it would be $240 and on up. But the fees are based upon square footage. The majority of time that the fire company spends and the majority of the resources is not fighting fires. It's, if you look at the fire report, you can see there was one house fire that Station 1 was involved in, one house fire Station 2 was involved in, not house fire, structural fire, in the last report, the last monthly report, and there were 94 events that Station 1 was involved in and 54 events that Station 2 was involved in. All the EMTs are out of the fire department. They respond to all the rescues and whatnot. In any event, and this is what the committee, the majority of the committee felt, is using fire square footage doesn't relate to what the costs really are. But in any event, for 2016, 2017, the fire expenditures, it's our budget, or $1.587 million. The fire district fees we received to run the fire department was $964,000. That means that our ad valorem taxes, our real property taxes, were underwriting the fire district fees by 40%. 40% of the cost of operating the fire district was paid by Sunset Beach's property taxes.
Actually, even a little more than that, because there have been some capital equipment expenditures which wouldn't be reflected in their annual
Well,
budget.
it wouldn't have been in that budget, but with the increase in, that we did receive a 25% increase in the fire district fees, our budget that we passed for 2017-18 is $1.547 million in expenditures. Even with the increase, we were only going to get a $1.2 million fire district fee, so we're still going to have to supplement the fire budget with our real property taxes. And I find it, I staffed a whole memo to the county about it, and it's not unique to Sunset Beach. There are other places that are impacted the same way. But to make it revenue neutral for our town, it would have required a 65% increase in the fire district fee. That way, everybody would be paying their equal share. But to use real property taxes and fire district fees, you're using apples and oranges.
You know, honestly, the bottom line is that with the increase in fire fees, which we've already just been charged for, it's basically a 1.62 cent tax increase to the residents of Sunset Beach, because you're continuing to pay out of your property taxes a certain percentage of the fire department's budget. Now they're getting an additional $240,000, which means, in a sense, that what they've gotten an extra 240, means what we give them should go down by $240,000 unless they make a case for what they want. So don't think for a minute that your taxes haven't gone up. They've now gone up like 1.6 cents on 100.
That's solely to fire district fees. That's solely generated by the county.
I understand that. The point is that they have now had an increase in their budget for $240,000. We have to decide whether or not we want to decrease their budget by $240,000 from property taxes, or whether or not they're going to justify the use of that $240,000 for other items. And they have put in a request for 4 additional firemen.
When you say they, you're talking about the
Our fire department. Okay. So what we're talking about now is whether or not we want to allow them to increase the number of firemen by 4 people, and we would not be getting back in our general budget the $240,000. So it is a tax increase. Don't think it's not. And I have a problem with it, honestly. I understand you, I know that you are going to make your case for more people, and I could be at the losing end of this vote, or you're going to make a case for additional equipment or whatever, but we're talking about our tax dollars. This is not free money. This is money that every one of us in this town is paying.
But
So-
this is, it's a product of the way the system is set up. Now, the system, in my opinion, is going to change within the next 2 years. There's going to be the county's going to come up with some solution to it. They're in the process of trying to talk about how they're going to do it. But, and I wouldn't want to venture a guess as to what it's going to end up being, but one of the difficulties with what you just said is that it impacts people in Ocean Ridge. It impacts, they're paying the additional fees as well,
Well,
but they're
right.
not paying municipal taxes.
They're not paying, but they don't pay property taxes.
I know
It's Our people are paying property taxes, and they're paying fire fees.
Right.
We've
That's
had this
correct.
discussion. I've told you this before. I don't agree with it either, but what do you want us to do? Do you
I
want
don't
us
want
to
you to
stop?
do anything, no.
We don't want to
You'll
stop
get that
providing
money, and we could
service.
We could take money that we've appropriated you and use it for something else.
But
Take
the-
240,000 increase in your budget and put it towards stormwater
But
erosion.
what would
Or
you
we could
say-
say, go ahead and hire
And-
more
and
people.
that- and
with it.
that's-
What would you
your
say?
decision.
What would you say to a resident of Ocean Ridge that says, you're reducing your taxes by my increase in fire district fees?
We're all paying the increase in fire fees. What they're getting is extra fire department services
No, they're-
out of our property taxes. Of course they
Yeah,
are.
but-
And
yeah,
we're
but-
supplementing their budget by $600,000. It's our town's
But
property.
Actually,
But
if
the
you...
25% increase is
if I can
supposed to
weigh
go
in
for
just a
fire
second,
districts.
so we don't have to argue anymore.
How about if we let the chief talk?
We did a lot of research on this, and we found that a lot of the people that live outside our district pay a lot more in fire fees than you think. They have a lot more square footage. It's based on your square footage.
But they're not paying property taxes.
And they don't pay property tax, but they're paying a very good fair share of their fire fee. Where and I'm in that boat personally. I have a bigger home. I pay a larger fire fee. Plus I pay an ad valorem tax. And then you go 2 streets over, they're not city limits. They're in the same neighborhood, and I'm in the, I
you
get
know
what you're
what?
saying.
What we need
It's-
to make
it's
a
a messed
decision
up
on it.
system.
What we need, I don't care what the system is. To me, it's quite simple here. You're getting an extra $240,000. You want to use it to hire 4 people.
And I need
Our
those 4
decision
people.
is, do we really want 4 extra people, or do we really need other equipment? That's the discussion that we should be having this evening.
Can we let him talk so we get the background on that?
I'm sitting here, I don't need equipment, I need people. And we've had this discussion
Mr.
for the
Mayor,
longest time.
if I, oh, I'm sorry.
And
We seem to, oh, I'm sorry, go on. No, no.
you go ahead.
I read your documentation. We seem to have several options. One is we could return the money back to the taxpayers. That's one option next year. The other option is that we could pay off the fire truck sooner with this money. Another option is that we could use this extra funding for the fire roof, or the new fire roof that we're going to need for Fire Station 1. We have to decide what the best, and the fourth option would be to hire more people. We have to recognize that our overhead is rapidly increasing. And the biggest expense item is the staffing. Now, we're a small town. We have fires. We don't have any schools. We don't have any industry. We don't have large shopping centers. It's primarily a residential community. Now, we have to decide what we're going to do with this money. We don't have to decide it tonight. But I caution that we're not going to fix our taxes are now 16 cents. And my warning is, quite frankly, if we don't do anything to control our overhead and fixed expenses, it's going to be 21 cents in the near future. In closing, I'm going to just say something that one of my best presidents said many times, and I've studied him much in history. Harry Truman said, the more money you give government, they're going to find a way to spend it. Well, people, we're going to have to find ways to save it.
Is there other discussion?
You know, Kevin, I just feel like, I've been to the roof. I've seen that situation. Water comes pouring down the side of the building. You have a major problem with that roof. Have we had, I know we have an engineering study on it. Have we had someone come back with a final price or cost of that roof yet?
We have the preliminaries, they're in. They'll be discussed at the workshop. They
What
just
are the
came in.
preliminaries?
They just came in. I really have not had a whole lot of time to go over them with them. And basically, I'm going to tell you, I forwarded it on to Susan, but
I'd like to know. I'm asking you, as your
do
council
you happen to
person,
look
what
at
are
the
the
numbers
preliminaries?
on that roof?
Until then, can
I'm
we?
asking now, you have an answer. What are the preliminaries?
Oh, it's messed up. I mean,
When you say messed up, what does that mean?
Is the problem you can't give a reliable number?
I don't have a reliable number because they
You can
couldn't.
tell us it's not a reliable number, but you have a
But
number.
you
What
know
is
the
that?
number I gave you? We're not far from that.
$500,000.
Very, very close to it.
Well, I'd like to table this issue until we find out a cost of that roof. Because I'm not gonna hire one person until we know that cost. If it's $500,000, where are we gonna get that money? Taxpayers. So let's find out the cost of that roof, Kevin, okay? So, Bob, I have a motion to table it until we find the cost of the roof.
John?
Did
John?
you have other information to share, provide, tell us about? Chief? Just what's in the written packet there.
And
Okay.
let me add to that, that I understand that these are recommendations from the fire department's basically lobbying groups and stuff, and we've talked about this. Almost all small communities in the nation do not follow those OSHA rules. They can't, not the NAFTA rules. They can't afford to. Is it NAFTA? I'm thinking that's the Tariff Association. Pardon? It's the National Association, the NA.
Most small communities were not following the NFPA regulations, which those are the ones that are used against us in the court when something happens. And that's why OSHA got involved. And that, we do have to follow those regulations.
And
Those are federal law.
I understand that, and we follow those rules.
We don't meet those rules. We've not met those rules on the last 3 fires we've arrived on.
Wait a minute.
We're-
Those
we're-
rules are for safety, and you are following them.
2
You're
in,
not
2 out.
You're not sending people in until you have 4 people.
You
You want 4 people on that first truck.
I'm not getting 4 people. I'm asking to put a 3rd guy on the truck.
Okay. You want 3 people on each truck.
I would like to.
Okay. I'd rather see us close fire station number 2, if that's what you need in order to get sufficient people to staff fire station 1. I'd rather see a closure of fire station 2.
I would too.
We do rely on mutual aid agreements. That was published. The article I read, which has everything that you had in there, also says the way people comply with this is they rely on mutual aid agreements with other communities, which we have.
Carol, Kevin's been saying since I've been in the council that we don't necessarily need fire station number 2, correct, Kevin? Is that what you've been
Oh, no,
saying?
we need it. We have to have it. You remember, there's parts of the town that are out there. We have to have it for that fire
I
district
mean,
out
parts of
there.
the district.
The problem is that it was always said it has to be manned. That is not a true statement. And
that's what I meant
but
when I
here's
said don't
here's
man
where
it.
your dilemma is going to come in as councilman. I've closed it before and moved them back, and due to safety issues, and the next thing I know, I was being directed to move people back into that station because it wasn't fair to the taxpayers on that side of town who, you know, are losing response time
I
there.
think that was more of an issue that none of us were told about it. We didn't know anything about it, and then we reacted.
Well, my perception is, it's not the facility, It's the bodies. You need the bodies. If you have, right now, if you have 2 in Fire Station 2 and they're out at a EMT call or an automobile accident.
Well, here's, it's not even that. We provide mutual aid also. So nine guys I've got can respond back at one time. They're all going to that mutual aid over to help out over at Ocean Isle. We had one not too long ago. They had a nice little working beach fire, and we had 2 guys left here. We had 4 calls in that time frame.
What, calls for what?
Medical calls. We had a rear end collision. We had somebody in the water. I mean, and I can't make my, and when you say mutual aid, our mutual aid is gone. When that fire happened, every one of the departments around us were at that fire. There's nobody coming in here and covering.
Look,
You
in
have a
it,
rescue in the ocean though, your EMT's out there taking care of that.
Not if it's at night.
Not if it's not, but during the day they are, right?
No, they don't have boats.
So I've seen them boat out there.
Yeah, and that's our guys been out there training the
The
regular
equipment has
guys.
to come from the land. They've got ATVs.
look, in an ideal world, I'd give you 20 people per station, and we could cover every possible incident that could happen. We're a tiny town of 3,600 people, and our population has not grown since, hardly grown.
Your population inside the city limits has not grown.
The
You've
population
seen
in
the neighborhoods that I'm dealing with on the
It's-
outside, they have
it's-
grown.
It's still not, it's not doubled, it's not gone up by a third. We're still a small community, and we've got to reflect the fact that we are a small community, and we cannot protect
And we're a
against
small
everything.
community running 2-man fire engines.
So if people tell me that they're willing to increase their taxes by 3 or 4 cents, well, fine. Most people I know are not, because they don't, they think we're okay the way we are now with the current staffing. Excuse me, I'm speaking. So I understand you and I have had a difference about this for 8 years now, for a very long time. I'm not unconvinced, you know, I mean, you've made some headway in terms of constantly battering for more people, but tonight, I'm certainly not willing to make any kind of decision on this, and I like what you suggested, which is a
Just find the
motion
cause,
to-
Kevin.
Well,
You know?
we have to move your
I
motion in a
table,
second.
yeah.
And one comment I wanted to make, though, about in your report, you gave a list of the calls from 2011 to 2016, and you had 4 full-time people for that entire time, a maximum of 4. And that's a 52.4% increase in calls over that period of time.
Call volume's going up. It's not going down.
And it's still covered by the same 4 people.
Same 4 people are covering the same amount of calls. And
You know, they're
you
covering
know,
52% more
What we don't
calls.
see is today, we've had, I think, 1 call, 2 calls today. Yeah, it's those calls at midnight to 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning that we don't turn our lights and sirens on and go to. But I've had the displeasure of having to run quite a few medical calls. I'm chief of the department. You ride around, ask any other chief. They don't run these kind of calls. I have the displeasure of going out and having to do that. And the other day, I actually had to work a cardiac arrest. It takes at least 6 people to work a cardiac arrest. And that's 6 people going at it. And the new protocols we have, they've changed, everything's changing. And that's where my field is. That's where I'm coming at you with the numbers. I need to start increasing some numbers. No offense, I've got some great volunteers, but they're just not trained. We've got some guys that are doing the things that we can't, you know, controlling the traffic. They're doing, but they can't get in there and hold a hearse tool. They can't cut you out of your car. They can't carry you down the stairs. And there's where, you know, and these are things that we're doing every day. Falls, trips, and I mean, it takes manpower to get these people downstairs.
Well, there's Mark's motion to table.
I'd
for what purpose?
like to get 2 cents in
Sure,
quickly
okay.
if I can.
And I have a discussion
The-
point also.
Go ahead.
The first point is, in the discussion of the population, it focuses on our permanent population, not our seasonal population, which is significantly higher. So I would imagine that brings much more increased demand on the fire department. Second point is, just where I come from, or my point of view is, you know, our town is one that we have good services, we have good town staff, we have good police, we have good fire. We have a responsibility to use the resources that we have to make sure that we're adequately manned so that people who are doing those jobs to protect us can do those jobs safely, as well as do it responsibly and effectively. And so I generally fall in line with, if you need more people, chief, give you more people. I also think that with some careful thinking, planning, and management, we can figure out how we can responsibly take care of paying for the roof, paying for the equipment, and taking care of other fiscal responsibilities that we have. And so I'm on your side. Give you 4 more people.
Peter? Peter?
It's easy to say that, John, but you all just gave us a $400,000 truck. It's not where, like, we're not supporting our fire department. That's the way you come across. I just want to table this until we find the cost of the roof.
Yeah, I understand that.
But
Right.
we
Peter?
we have great equipment, but I don't have the people to run some of the equipment
I
I have.
understand that, Kevin, but we have to be fiscal, responsible.
And I completely understand that.
It's been 7 months. Does it really take 7 months to find out how long the price of a roof?
Mr.
Wait, hold on a second.
Pete hadn't spoken yet.
Peter?
Thank you, Mayor. There's been some confusion that I think up here on council and the dais we've not been clear. I've heard people make statements about tax increases and whether you believe it or not, your taxes have gone up. Let's not confuse the inequity of the fire fee system and the money that's controlled by the county, both within our fire district, both for our citizens and people that are in our fire district but not in our city limits. It is not an increase to our town taxes, and I don't want anybody to think there is. It is an increase in the fire fees. As the mayor said, this whole fire fee system is probably going to die. And when it does die, we will be paying for the entire fire department from your taxes. I wanted to hear the mayor, I wanted to hear the fire chief speak to his desire to protect not only our firefighters that arrive and have 2 arrive on a scene in a brand new fire truck, Mark, or a 20-year-old fire truck that we used to replace it. And again, let's not confuse that $450,000 we paid for a new fire engine with what the chief is here talking about in his proposal he sent to us. That was outdated equipment that needed to be replaced. That's just like, at some point in time, you're gonna have to place your Tahoe.
He makes it come across as we do not want.
Okay, I'm gonna finish. But having 2 firefighters show up is not only unsafe for those 2 firefighters, it is, I've been on a fire engine with 1 other firefighter going to a fire alarm activation with my heart pounding out of my chest because I've got very little experience in training, even though I'm certified. But I don't have the experience. I'm sure that other firefighter is probably saying, oh my God. And it's not only unsafe for those 2 firefighters, but it's unsafe for our citizens. And I can guarantee you that if they get to a fire scene, and there's 2 of them, they're going to drop what they're doing, they're not going to grab the hydrant, they're not going to follow protocol, and they're going to go in and they're going to save somebody's dog or somebody's husband or somebody's kid. And there's a huge difference in the first 5 minutes before the mutual aid has showed up as to whether you have 2 firefighters that are responding to that scene or whether there's 3. If you get 3, you've got 1 that can do a 360, a walk around, 1 that can get the pump running, and 1 that can grab a hydrant to get a water source. Because without a hose, that firefighter is not going to do a whole lot of help. I'd like to hear the chief out. I think what Mark's comment about the roof is certainly important for us, but it is not the issue we're here talking about. The roof needs to be fixed no matter what the fire fees are.
I agree.
That's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I think we need more data in the sense that I would like to know what the second fire station cost. I would like to have a cost analysis of what the second fire station costs. And I'm going to pick up something what Carol said.
You mean cost to operate?
Cost to operate. Now, the question I have is, if the second fire station becomes a satellite station, non-staffed, how does that impact the fire fees?
Doesn't impact the fire fees.
Hmm?
Doesn't impact them.
So we still get the same amount of income
Mhm.
if we consolidate services.
If you
Yeah, the-
move the paid
Yeah.
staff out of there, you get
That's
the same.
the information.
The problem that you get.
But it
if you
affects,
have-
it affects fire insurance premiums.
You're going to expect the response time to Cape Side, Windfall, Sandpiper, the backside of Sea Trail. These are places that I can't get to in under 8 minutes coming from Station 1. It's just impossible. That's why that station was built. And not only that, I can't get to Ocean Ridge, and I can't get out to the buildings that I protect out Seaside Road.
Well, that's why we have mutual aid. We got
No,
Calabash,
I'm
Ocean Island.
responsible for those areas. That is our responsibility.
If there's a fire like there was on the island, every Tom, Dick, and Harry came and showed up.
Yeah. How long was it before they got here? I had 2 guys there. And
We
then
live
2
in
more
a-
guys showed
you
around
know,
back.
I don't want to
And-
make this an emotional issue, but we live in a rural segment of our country. Okay, and there's certain things you sacrifice by living in a rural area. And one could be response time. Now, most of the fires that we have in this town, at least the serious ones that we've had recently, people's fires burnt to the ground.
Their houses did burn to the ground. Their neighbors' houses did not. And that's all we could do.
It's containment.
Exactly.
And I think people respect that, and I tell people all the time.
But fortunately,
make sure you have good fire.
Fortunately, the last fire over in your area, you know, we had to help the people out of the house. They were still in it.
Yeah, no.
You know,
I
and
was in Boston at the
fortunately,
time. I heard all
we
about
had a full crew that day, and I was still here.
Yeah, and that fire station, that house is only about a half a mile from the fire station. Because we have wind conditions and other Mother Nature conditions that, you know, as far as Gump said, certain things happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a balance, it's a balancing act,
I know.
okay? It's a balancing act.
I balance it every day. I try to figure out how I'm going to staff a truck when
When
one
I-
of my 2 people call in sick.
When I first moved here, we had 9 firemen. We had 1 fire station. Now we have 2 fire stations and 14 firemen.
Well, technically, we only have 12. We have 2 chiefs.
Well, I count the chief and the assistant chief as personnel. Where are we going? That's why we need to do cost analysis. Where are we going? The second fire station was built not just to have coverage on the other side. The planners were anticipating Jaguar's Lair. It never happened.
Had
They were
nothing-
anticipating development where the Exxon station is and where Piggy Willie's or Wiggly was.
Those things are still there. There's still structures
Yeah,
that
they're
still have
still
to be
there and they're
protected.
empty.
No, they're empty. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter that they're empty. They still have to be protected.
There's lots of
I'm
development
just-
going on
I
behind
mean, we
them.
could argue this all day. Chatham Glen is being built. There's 6 that the units are going in now. The main reason that station was there is because of the response time to Cape Side, which is in the city limits the last time I checked.
Yeah, because the
Along
town
with the
annexed.
backside of Sandpiper.
Yeah, because the town went on an annexation
It's
campaign.
over 5 miles from Station 1 to the backside of Sandpiper Bay, now that we do not have a cut-through road. We lost the cut-through, and it wasn't even a state road we were cutting through on anyway, but we have to go, it's 5 miles. That makes them uninsurable. Nobody can touch that neighborhood. That is the reason the station had to be 5. They would have lost their insurance rating. just like the people in Ocean Ridge would have lost their insurance rating. That means you get no insurance. That means you're a 10, the highest you can be. That is why the station was built out there, for them to receive an insurance rating and to keep their insurance rating. You want to take that, you don't talk about tax dollars, take away their insurance, see what it costs when you're uninsured.
What, does the staffing have any impact on the insurance rates?
Yes, it absolutely does. It'll lower, we could be, instead of going to a 4, we could have went to a 3, but we were lacking in staff. We had lack of response
But that
by
doesn't
personnel.
save any dollars. My understanding is the dollars.
Does for commercial.
But not
Re-
for,
residential
not for the
Not for residential, but for
population.
your commercial it does.
All right,
But for the residential the 3,600 population, it would not change their
all right,
insurance.
we're obviously going to have a chance to revisit this if the motion to table carries. The motion is to carry till there's more definitive information on the cost of the roof. That was Mark's motion. All right? So we'll have a chance to have any other questions or concerns expressed as we go along. But the motion is to table it till we get more complete information on the cost. Now, Bonnie, is it possible to identify costs associated with the station number 2?
It would require a great deal of effort. So yes, it's theoretically possible.
Rich, I'm not sure I understand why that's necessary.
It's $732 a month right now is what we pay in the power bill. I know that much. The rest of it,
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
that's basically all we're
Great
paying
num-
for out there is power.
It's not allocated on a
Great number of
station
other
basis.
costs,
so
there's
it's not-
allocations.
But that's our monthly
of-
bill usually on electrics. But
What I asked her is, her response is
Right.
Exactly.
very
Right.
difficult.
But there are other things
Very
ground,
difficult for
well,
her to
there's any
identify
number
what the
of
cost of
things
the operation
that
of
go
the second
into
station is.
operating that building
All right,
besides.
I'm going to call for a vote on the table, motion to table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next item on the agenda is discussion concerning the amendment to ordinance 93, premises to kept clean, notice of violation.
Okay, I'm going to make this real quick for you, Hiram. I had a number of questions and a number of suggested changes. What if we move this to the agenda for next week and let me sit down with Hiram and go over there were word changes. Anyway, I had a bunch of questions. I would not be ready to do this at all tonight.
Real quick, if a lot of those changes deal with a lot of the existing language, you'll need to sit down with both Dustin and I.
That's
So
fine.
I'm just letting you know.
Absolutely fine, but I did have some questions. I have one statement I'd like to make on this. I noticed that the ETJ was eliminated on unimproved, on certain of these things. So for unimproved empty parcels of land, the ETJ does not have to bush hog? Is that correct? And I got a letter, and the reason I'm asking this is I got a letter from somebody who lives in our ETJ who all of the houses surrounding some empty parcels want those parcels not to be bush hogged. It's apparently an environment for deer and, it's a natural escape and they want it kept that way. And I don't even have to discuss that if this is taking that requirement away from them.
It would be. State law allows us to enforce certain town laws within a mile. It's just not good practice to enforce city laws on non-city residents.
Okay.
So that's why we were asking to take it
If you all
out.
would bear with me and just put this off for 1 week, let me, because I have
Yes,
so
sir.
many questions.
Carol?
Yeah.
I've had several emails, and people call me about just painting the lots once or twice a year. Once it gets cut, it rains a couple times, that grass is that high again.
The reason Dustin's up here is he deals with the vacant lots. I deal with
We do it 3 times a year at least.
So we have to give Dustin a dozen more people to do it.
Well, we used to do it on our own in Billabee. They said we can't do that, so, I don't know why, but, so that changed, but that
We don't
kept.
have the staff.
You don't have the staff, I don't have the people.
Staff reason it wasn't legal.
We don't bush hog the lots.
No, I don't have the people to do it.
No, you used to hire a private company.
Yeah.
Why can't we go back?
Go back to us doing it?
No,
We do currently hire private.
I do go outside and hire a private contractor to come in.
But now we only require it twice a year. I'm asking to put it 3 times a year.
3 times a year?
Yeah. Dustin, look at the lots we mowed just a couple of weeks ago. They're this high already.
You know,
And
we're
the
talking
snake crawled
about,
out, and the guy down the street from me.
you don't think it's burdensome on people?
Yeah,
with an
Mark, you have
empty
to be
lot?
practical. We have to be practical. If somebody has a vacant lot, I also own a vacant lot, I cut it twice a year. You can't make them make it look the same as somebody's front lawn. It's,
Yeah, I understand it. But really, you go around the island, some of those vacant lots, 3 or 4 weeks, they're this high. But, you know, after 4 months go by, they're this high. That's unacceptable.
With the ordinance, me trying to enforce it, I have to wait till the end of May before I can go around. And I'm the one that goes around looking at all the vacant lots. And we have to get together, and the city, we have to get together, pull up parcels and start sending letters out. They have 30 days. I have to ride back around again to see if they done it or not. So I spent a lot of time riding, trying to enforce this.
I understand it, Dustin, but it seemed to work years ago when we did it as, you know, we sent you a letter. If it wasn't done in 30 days, you hired someone out there to do it. You didn't do it, or the town didn't do it.
At the
And
time,
we billed the homeowners.
we did do it at start with. We
I
did.
know.
But that requirement,
Yeah.
that only once or twice a year was still, I think,
This,
in there.
this
That
ordinance has been
hasn't
in place for a
changed.
long time.
All right, does anybody have a problem with carrying this over till the 15th? Because I'd like Susan to be here as well.
I've got several comments too. I don't
Why
want
don't
to
you- I
burden them
was
here.
gonna-
I'd like
I was just
to,
gonna suggest that you go ahead
yeah,
with them.
and
I just don't
yes,
wanna
I'd like
have
to be,
action
I'd like to
taken
sit down with both of you. I think we can do it in an hour and a half, go through the whole thing.
Why don't we try and figure out how to do that together, okay?
All right, so that's going to be an item for the 15th. The next item is consideration of the adoption of the ordinance amendment for Article 6, Section 6.04, privacy fence subdivision. We've had a report from the planning board. We've had public hearing. I'll entertain a motion on and then we can have discussion if there's discussion on it.
I move that we accept the planning board's recommendation to not approve the privacy fence as stated in the ordinance.
All right, discussion on that motion.
I'd like to say something on this. I have some insight and in terms of, I understand there are a number of, we're talking about Riverside Drive here. I understand, and I see it every day, there are in fact a number of people trespassing and fishing off. They did the same thing at my end until houses started to get built. Once houses started to get built, that problem went away. I would suggest that the problem in Riverside Drive will go away as more houses are completed. There are at least 5 under construction right now, and I'm sure more coming in the works. Frankly, you know, regardless of I think the rationale used by the planning board was protecting the coastal waters. I go broader than that. My interest in not approving this has more to do with the quality of the Sunset Beach community that we know. And it's an open, family-friendly area, does not contain a lot of gated communities. I think most people in our community would like to not see a bunch of gated communities in restricted places. And there are a number of private roads in Sunset Beach that, if this were passed, could in fact start gating off their areas. I live on one of them, and I don't want to see that occur. It's not the community that I bought into when I came to Sunset Beach. So
The action when we scheduled the hearing, I'm reading for it. Mayor Pro Tem Scott made a motion to accept the planning board recommendation to deny the proposed UDO amendment for Article 6, sections blah, 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 concerning privacy fences, subdivisions, and table considerations pending legal advice. For the same reasons, do we have to make a specific findings to deny it?
No, the specific findings is that you don't feel it's in harmony with the general welfare of the public, yada, yada, yada. I
Okay.
mean, it's
All right.
it should already be the language that's in
Can I
there.
make one statement on this? I notice this in a number of these things, and as we get to them, if we're going to approve Lisa, this is for you, we'll need to start changing language. I think we're taking a form when we draft these, whereas, you know, these ordinance changes. And in that form, something's been, somewhere along the line, something has been omitted, and I haven't noticed it until now. Look at the third paragraph on page 1. It says, whereas an application for a text amendment requesting an alteration concerning fences, block, semicolon. What we're missing is, whereas an application has been submitted for a text amendment. It's that, and I'm going to do it on the next one too. It's something has been submitted. I think somewhere along the line that language just somehow on our little form got omitted.
Okay, I'm going to, if there's no more discussion on the substance, call for a vote on Ms. Scott's motion to deny, to go along with the recommendation of the planning board to deny the requested change. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Did you vote yes or no?
Aye.
The next vote, the next item is the ordinance amendment for that's privacy fence, the text for maximum density.
I move that we accept the planning board's recommendations to deny the request for increasing the density in Beach Business 1.
Can I ask a question? Is
No.
it,
And
probably
then-
not. I
You
mean,
will
there's a common, I think a common sense aspect that I'm just kind of concerned with. I fully agree with the idea that BB1, the density should not be changed. When you go by and you see that row of quads, I mean, it's there. There's nothing we can do about it. It doesn't make it look any better by leaving an empty lot there. It won't make it look any better by making a one-story lot there. I mean,
I completely agree with you.
makes sense to let them fill it in and look unified.
the problem.
So can we do in such a way that we, you know, make an exception and
John, I think I've got a solution to what where you're
permit
going.
this house to be built?
Well,
and
Pete, real
not
quick,
change
I
the
asked,
BB
Why-
ones?
we're-
I asked
Board of
Grady-
Adjustment has a role and responsibility to deal with unique situations. Can't this go before
It's
the
not a
Board of
hardship.
Adjustments?
The-
Well, but that's up to the Board of Adjustment to determine.
What can happen here is they can still apply for the Board of Adjustment regardless of what y'all talk about. Nothing can stop them from applying to the Board of Adjustment. However, based on the statutes in North Carolina, the 4 criteria to meet a hardship, they
Yeah,
don't
they
meet
are.
2 of them because this is a man-made problem. They can build something there. They could build, you know, duplexes that are just as high as the other buildings. I mean, nothing says it has to be 4 units. It just has to be reasonable use of the property.
If we
So I'm not sure if the Board of Adjustment could legally issue a variance. And to get to the point I think you were making,
Can we
this council can't
authorize-
issue a variance.
Can or cannot?
Cannot.
Cannot.
That power solely rests with
Yeah.
the Board of Adjustment.
We have to change the
problem
ordinance.
is, if we change just this one street, that's spot zoning, which
That's
we
spot
can't
zoning, you
legally
get into
do
the
either.
problems. If you allow just one, it's considered spot zoning, conditional zoning, which we don't allow in our ordinances.
John, I'm with you.
So-
I wish
so-
there were a creative way to let him just go
Well,
ahead and do it.
Yeah, so what is your solution? I mean, is
There is no
something to do other than leaving that place empty or just putting can they put a one-story house in there? I mean, not
They
that
could-
anybody would want to live in that.
They could put in a duplex.
Real quick, you know, guys, when I was sitting next to Grady, I asked him, what kind of solution could we have on this? He said, there's a solution. There is a one-time ordinance where we could pass something, but it would have to go to the planning board. And they have to get their approval from them to come to us. Is that something you could talk to Grady about before we make this decision tonight?
I'll talk to Grady because I've never heard of just doing conditional use for one property that's not conditional zoning. And you can do it with conditional zoning for sure, but we don't have conditional zoning in our ordinances.
Well, before we make that decision today, I agree with John, agree with Pete, and agree with Carol. Can we talk to Grady about this to make a legal decision instead of just,
I think the consensus is that if we could do it, to allow just that one thing, we'd probably all vote go ahead. You know, what difference does it make at this point? But not if it means changing zoning.
To
in each
change
business.
BB1,
Yeah, we
All
don't,
right, so.
As our ordinances stand, I think BB1's the only option unless Grady can come up with something better.
So,
I'd recommend having him at the meeting.
What I would suggest is that you carry this till the August 15th meeting for
Well,
action.
He may not have a chance.
maybe
to.
a little bit quick for the legal review.
Well, then it would be to
I'd do it
September,
to the September
December
meeting.
5th.
Well, just try to make it the 15th. These poor people were waiting over a year. So let's try to rush it. If we can't do it, let's do it in September. Excuse me.
What, excuse
Have
me,
time to Speak later.
the,
I'm sorry, are we moving this to the 15th?
the 15th.
Okay.
All right, so I'll withdraw my
If we can get
motion.
the legal answer by then.
All right, I'll see if I can't get a hold of Grady tomorrow also.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay. The, that's it, because we did, no, the adoption of ordinance amendment regarding building codes, regulations, and standards. Do I have a motion with regard to amending, with regard to the building?
Okay, so Hiram, first of all, Tom, I think we said at some time we were going to have the planning board up with you when we discussed these things, which came, where the planning board also deliberated, and I wish you had been up here, and I apologize for not having called you up sooner. One thing we had asked the last go-around is that when we're doing something or we're changing something, it would be very helpful to have the old version attached. Now, I happen to have the old version, so I didn't need it, but for anybody else here, they wouldn't know what's been changed or how language differed. That's number one. Number two, I had some concern that not everything, I still don't think we have covered everything that was in the old chapter 51 in all of these things that have come before us for unsafe, minimal.
Unsafe building, minimum housing,
That's
and
one,
building
and then
inspectors,
these things.
the next item.
Because you're covering the building inspectors, but you're, you know, their duties, but it's only, it's under, unfortunately, under minimum housing unsafe building. And there's not a general thing about the duties and obligations.
If I may, real quick.
Sure.
The building inspector's duties are outlined under general statutes. We don't have to reiterate them.
We don't. See, the last go-around I heard was that we did.
We don't.
Okay.
However, we are including them under the minimum housing article proposal to give it more validity that they're the one in charge of minimum housing and unsafe structures.
All right, so to go to this thing then, on page 2, I don't know how you print this, or if you make corrections when it goes to print. You've got just a spacing between B and C. And but more important, what's the enforcement on this? Where are the enforcement paragraphs?
Since this falls under the zoning ordinance, it falls under the enforcement for the rest of the zoning ordinance.
So it
So
says,
it's
for
under
example, that the person is responsible for removing, or the cost of removing debris, whatever, they're responsible for doing this. If they don't do it,
Falls under chapter,
Where are
Article 1, 1.12, I believe, which is enforcement. If I remember correctly, I got it on my phone, hang on.
I just want to make sure that we've covered.
Well, since it all falls under the UDO, it all falls under the general provisions. This is under all the general provisions
Do
of the
we need
ordinance.
to insert a civil penalty in this?
No, there's already one in the ordinances.
That would cover this particular section.
Let me find the article, please, real quick. I don't seem to have Article 1 on my phone. Of course not.
Look, I'll trust you on that. Go ahead and look it up. If you find for some reason that you're wrong, come back at the next meeting with a change to this one.
Well, the reason I'm saying is it's no different than, you know, there's a problem with Article 6, there's a problem in Article 5. They all go back to the same penalty features of the ordinance. Everything in the UDO has the same penalty
But
under
it
the
doesn't
first
say
article.
how we would do that. In many places, we've said, if a person doesn't do this, we give them notice, we do this. I don't see that here.
Okay, yes, ma'am, I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is it's in a completely different chapter in the UDO. Everything in the UDO that's wrong, that you do wrong, that it says you have to do this, and if you don't, it goes back to the penalty features outlined under the first article.
And notice and every,
Yeah,
just do me a favor, just confirm that, we can do that. I'm assuming what you're saying is true. If for, God forbid, if for some reason it's not, we'll fix it. How's that? Page 3, aren't the street address display, isn't that included in the fire, doesn't the fire department have those requirements? I know
Not that
when
I'm
this
aware of,
was-
it's always been in our building code.
I have down here, not needed, the street address display not needed in building and fire code.
Building inspector said to leave it in because it's not anywhere else.
Nothing if we're not either duplicating something, or if it is duplicate, just make sure it's the same in both places. My understanding was that it was in the fire code.
I think it'd be more important to be the same in both places.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean,
and I
rather
don't-
than dropping it out of here, it could just leave,
But
it'd be
that's-
harder to find the fire code in it, so just leave it in.
Right, so would you just double check on that one too? And we used to comply on page 4, we talk about owners or occupants of buildings already constructed which do not comply with this ordinance, that's putting up house numbers, will be required to comply the next time any development permit is applied for. That I don't like. I mean, they either have to do it or they don't have to do it. We used to require compliance within 60 days of giving them notice. Somehow that's changed. So this thing, I don't think is, I don't want to, if somebody's fire numbers fall off their building, this is why I think it's in the fire code too. I don't want to wait for them to come in for a development permit before making them put up a house number. The fire department needs that, you know, for safety reasons, we need those numbers up there. And that was required in the old code, it's not in this one.
When you say the old code, what I was working from, this was cut almost verbatim out of it. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here that we just cut and paste from the old code, but don't know what old code you're talking about because it wasn't called Chapter 51 that I was holding. It was like 150.300 or something like that. From the 2005
You've
code
got
I've got in my
150,
office.
300.
I've got 153, hang on, it's in here.
But I mean, I
I
don't
went
know.
through this afternoon, that's why I know it's in here. Shoot, I have to go through this whole bloody thing. I'm telling you, I got that from this thing. Building. Here it is. No, street, here we go. In the old 150.300.8, enforcement, section B, it's section 2C. It says, the old one, it said, owners already constructed do not comply with this ordinance will be notified and requested to meet these requirements within 60 days of the date of notification. Warning notice will be issued after 60 days if the requirements have not been met. And that's with owners to purchase numbers. It was in the old thing. So that needs to go back in.
But you want it taken out.
No, I want that
But this is under
added.
addressing.
I want a requirement that they, even if a building has already been constructed, if they don't comply with house numbers, that we give them notice and they have to comply within 60 days.
She doesn't want it dependent on building activity.
Right, I understand, but, okay, I'm confused. I'm still thinking in the process you wanted to take addressing out, but.
No. No, I said, I thought,
You got
what I
past that.
said at the
Okay.
beginning
You got past
was that
that.
I thought it was in the fire code. If it's not in the fire code, no problem. If it is in the fire code, make sure the language is the same as what's in the fire code, that we don't have conflicting language. And under all of those circumstances, we still need to add back in the compliance for a currently constructed building. And that was it. You'll be happy to know.
I believe Mr. Corbett had some comments regarding debris paragraph.
On page 2,
Which I've
page 2, section 2.21, item A, I just found it to be a very confusing sentence, and I had no idea what you're talking about, what it was talking about. I suggest a simplification. It is.
And
At-
if I may real quick,
Sure.
the one you sent me, is that the one?
Yeah.
It would be pretty much everything's the same from no owner through the town limits, or the limits of the town. And then is responsible for immediately removing any construction-related debris, trash, or refuse from any adjacent property to include roads, streets, canals, beach, and public areas. And I can, since we're gonna have to come back on this anyway, I can submit that as part of an alternative or something for y'all to look at next time.
The point was, anybody who's doing any work of construction has to pick up everything afterwards, and all the adjacent areas.
And they rarely do that.
All right, this is gonna come back when? We got a pretty heavy
When do
agenda
you
for
do
the
it?
15th.
We'll do the first meeting in September?
I can have it back on the 15th if you like, or the first meeting in September with the rest of the building stuff, or whenever.
Yeah, bring it back on the 15th.
15th. And real quick, it is under 1.12 G, penalties for and remedies for violations. We have 4 criteria to go through. Most of it harkens back to North Carolina General Statutes 14-4. There's also, let's see, enforcement appropriate equitable remedy, you know, by the town, 72 hours to pay back the civil penalty, things like that. And there's a whole section on notice.
All right, the next item under new business is consideration of the acceptance of planning board recommendations for UDO amendment for minimum housing unsafe building ordinance and schedule a public hearing for September 5.
Mayor, can I go back just for one quick, because I don't want Carol to be left with a, I just got some information. The fire code, the fire regulations regulate commercial, not residential.
Not residential.
So that, we
Perfect.
needed to have it here because it's not there for residential.
Okay.
That
So
was an
your
important point,
predecessor
Mayor.
was the
Thank
one
you
who made
for
the mistake.
Fine.
allowing
Just so
me.
that you know, not you.
Okay.
So he had indicated that it was in the fire.
All right,
I
the,
got you.
the planning board at their July 20th meeting voted unanimously to recommend approval of this text amendment. And all we need to do is set it for a public hearing at this point.
Right, and I'd like to point out that I've asked Kerry White to be here to handle the role for that meeting, since this is his child, so to
Okay.
speak. It's his full area of responsibility, and he's been through these proceedings several times, so he'd be able to answer questions regarding
So I have
how
a
these
motion-
rules relate to those proceedings as well.
Do I have a motion to set it for a public hearing on September 5th?
So moved.
All those in
Wait,
favor?
wait, wait, wait. I found some of this also confusing. Before, I know we're going to set it for a public hearing, but just remind me to ask you some questions about this beforehand, so.
And while you bring that up, I
I've been more-
invite any of y'all to come sit down with me the moment we set public hearings, or even beforehand, to talk about the language. We don't have to wait till tonight to discuss hiccups, word choices, things like that, things that could easily be shifted before we write the
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, an example of that is, look at page 12, paragraph 2. This was just so difficult to figure out, and I don't know if there's a state requirement that says you have to have 4/5, or if this was somebody else's thing that we copied.
A lot of it is copied, but there's a 4/5 vote is pretty much standard when you're dealing with people's issues like this.
Is it required, or is it, there's a difference between being legally required and being standard, and, anyway, so I have a bunch of questions for you. Just give you fair notice.
You have a bunch of questions for Carrie.
Well, no, I want to talk before we
Yeah,
have the
but-
public.
Yeah, Carrie White would be the one to talk to
Oh,
about
I'm
these
sorry.
things.
Okay, okay,
I mean, I'm more than happy to, but this isn't my wheelhouse.
okay.
All right.
I don't want to mislead.
I don't know, did we vote on the motion for the hearing on the 5th? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The next item is the consideration of the adoption of budget ordinance
Thanks, Sean.
amendment for shellfish survey related shore management and pre-dredging analysis project.
If I may, this is a housekeeping item. It solidifies what you all approved at the June 26 meeting to go forward with the shellfish survey and to go forward with permitting for all of the areas except for North Jinks Creek.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion?
Oh,
Bonnie, we're adding, I can't find your document, but I'm trying to make some sense of this. We're adding $165,000.
Only 92.5.
I mean, 93 is for the shellfish and another,
The 72.6.
is this the second permit?
No, this is for the permit that was already included in the original engineer's contract. That we contracted with, is it Moffett and Nichols? I can't think with which one? We contracted with Moffett and Nichols to do a number of things. One of the things that we contracted with them to do was permitting for all of the affected areas. And what you all did on the 26th was separate out North Jenks Creek to do a shellfish survey before any permitting is done. The shellfish survey was not included in the original contract with Moffett.
No, I understand that.
So this is housekeeping to move funds around to pay for what we have already approved. This is a housekeeping document. I know you voted against what we approved, but we did approve it, and this is just housekeeping to move the money. Is that correct?
Yes, the shellfish survey is a new appropriation. We did not originally anticipate doing the shellfish survey.
We approved doing it, now we're
just
moving money
Okay,
around
we
to
also,
cover the cost.
we also collectively approved a second permit.
Yes.
Where is that?
Well, I don't know that you approved a second permit. I don't believe that's in the minutes.
What we approved is moving forward.
Right.
Well, it might,
We
well, there
we
might
approved
be.
moving forward
Yeah.
on the canals and everything other than North Jinks Creek because a shellfish survey was deemed appropriate by council. So we're moving ahead on the finger canals at all and holding back on North Jinks Creek until a shellfish survey is in fact completed.
And no permitting on Jinks Creek can be done until that survey is completed.
Correct. Theoretically, the permitting for North Jinks Creek, if it happens, is included, but there might be an economies of scale cost because it wasn't done with the others at the same time as the others. And I actually see a typo now. The budget amendment that you have for consideration is in error. The amendment says 95.5. 95,000, it should be 92.5. So that's a typo.
Mine says 92.5.
No, she's talking about the
amendment-
actual,
The
look at
amendment
the second
itself.
page.
Staff report says 92.5, and that's correct.
Gotcha.
But the budget,
Bonnie, so thus far, we have expended almost $338,000.
no, we have appropriated that much money. We have not expended it.
Yep.
I
Or
move
you all
that
have.
we approve the capital project budget ordinance amendment as amended just now.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Consideration, I think that, page analysis, review of the agenda items, and identifying any new agenda items. We have for the 15th, ordinance adoption on preservation of trees, discussion of the park rules and uses, discussion of stormwater management plan,
Take off number 4.
island properties is out, or island parking is out. You were one of the,
So you'll add those.
Peter, you were one of the ones, so you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It should be,
And then we have the things that we
the new
added from.
council can figure it out. I mean, honestly, at this point, it should be removed.
I'll make some comments on it over time, but it's.
Right, but, and then we had the items that we added today to the 15th.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just make a suggestion, these meetings seem to go on endlessly. If somehow if we can balance things so that we get a guesstimate of time. Next week, we're having a discussion on stormwater management plan. I think it might be a good idea before we dive into this is to invite the Oak Island Environmental Resource Committee, who has dealt with this issue recently in Oak Island and even one in the Pelican Ward. So I'd like to find out how they address this issue, how much their money they saved. I mean, I read that stormwater issue, and I'll be very honest with you, to me, it sounds very complicated. I'm not a civil engineer. But I would like to at least get some help from other towns who have gone through this, to see if we can somehow pick their brain.
We have, Rich, a lot of documentation on what Oak Island did. They had a major field trip there. Susan was present at it. We've got a lot of documentation on exactly what they did, what initiatives they took, what plans, what processes that worked or didn't work for them. To have them speak at a meeting, I mean, they've provided that information to
Who has the
everyone.
information?
Susan has it, I have it, I'd have to locate it, but I've read it 2 or 3 times.
Well, I like
there's
that.
articles that have been in the Beacon on it, very detailed.
Well, it'd be nice if others had it, so we can better understand.
Is it, Peter, what the information is in a form that it's disseminable, that you can make sense out of it?
I'd rather look at that than make these meetings even longer, Rich. You just said you wanted to cut the meetings shorter.
Well,
What I'm saying is, I don't think.
They've put together white papers on what they did, and what they did is just looked at what other people were doing.
Well, what I'm going to suggest
Our
is-
engineering firm has all of the documentation, very specific documentation of things that they did, and in fact highlighted a number of theirs that they thought were appropriate for our situation here in Sunset Beach.
Lisa,
can you put
are
that-
you familiar with this, what he's talking about? Is it volume-wise, how much, I mean, is it capable of being reproduced and getting to us by next, so we have a chance to consider it?
Susan has all the handouts that were given. I couldn't go that day because I was someplace else.
But I mean, we could have it in time to consider it for the next meeting. Okay. Then we'll leave that on for the 15th. They'll get, Lisa's going to send out copies of all that stuff to everybody.
Okay, and then this will be
It's still on for the 15th.
still on the agenda?
All right, anything else that, on the,
No, Mr. Mayor, in the near future, I'm going to be submitting a proposal for the council regarding the conflict of interest policy, and once received, I hope that'll be an agenda item.
yeah, we'll
'cause
put that on. We'll put that on.
Hmm?
We'll put it on.
Yeah.
You're entitled to have it
We
on.
need to start a conversation.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comments. Once again, if you step forward, state your name, your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Mr. Nern?
Charlie Nern, 647 Oyster Bay Drive. All this stuff about the fire department. As a police officer, I've been the first one in a fire, and more than once, and I've always thought, what am I doing in here? We have to think about the safety of our firefighters, and even more so, the safety of our citizens. Now, if there's a fire at my house, my wife and I are on the first floor. What if my grandchildren are upstairs? Carol, what happens if there was a fire at your house? Will they be manned enough to get you and your husband out? That's all I have on that. But I do want to say some of the nice things I've seen around the town. The circle, the approach when you go up the bridge. On the island, the landscaping is beautiful. I would have done a different color flowers around the circle, but they still look very nice, and the Christmas trees look very healthy. There's I just learned something. During Matthew, or right after Matthew, our staff, under the direction of Susan Parker, kept minute records of every expense. It was so good that FEMA even commented on it. And we have almost every penny we put out returned already. So we owe Susan and the staff a big thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We owe them a big thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comments? Ms. Scanpinic?
Carol Santavica, 9109 Forest Drive Southwest. I need, and I think a lot of our citizens need some clarification on the fire fees. Do we set our own? Can they be different from the county, or is the county setting them?
Yes.
Okay, so if the county is setting them, that's not even an issue for discussion. That's a fact. We just have to work with that fact. I just get frustrated with these discussions on trying to save money in areas where I would certainly be very happy to spend more money as a citizen, even if it takes, some of that money is taken to pay for saving someone's life outside of the city limits. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish with this. We got to put a roof on, we got to put a roof on. You want to close that fire department again? You still have to pay the $700 electric bill because you have to leave the utilities on or the building becomes mildew and then you'll have a condemned building. At least if you don't want to do it anymore, give it to the county if they'll take it and man it. But don't be penny wise and pound foolish. And penny wise and pound foolish is exhibited in that stupid observation deck that was just built that I couldn't even get my whole family in.
Thank you. Any other public comment? None appearing. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye. Carol.